Well, there's the long-standing concern top of mind for most people is just the data breaches. We have a set of secure data, and we want to make sure only the people we desire and the systems we desire access that data. As AI is proliferating, we say, and the number of tools are growing, it's becoming harder and harder to kind of maintain that boundary around your protected data. And then on top of that, the new world of generative AI actually adds a couple additional security risks that agents should be thinking about. First, these large language models are predominantly developed by third parties, civilian industry, or open source. And malicious actors may have purposely mistrained those models to behave incorrectly at just the right time. And so that's a risk to make sure you're thinking about. And then the second one is in the using of those models, maybe you set some guardrails around them to protect what they tell you. And malicious actors can purposely craft prompts that will get around those guardrails. So you're thinking about how's the model trained, and then how is malicious actors interacting with the model. Make sure you have protections on those. So as you think about the security, and I mentioned the proliferation of tools, one of the things we think is the most important is having one central platform that manages and governs all of your AI applications. So you can have a real-time monitoring of every model, look for things like malicious actors, look for unauthorized access. And then, of course, that platform should come with robust role-based access control. So each user only has access to the models and then ultimately the data that user should have access to. And then if you take a step back and say, well, how do we make sure the models we deploy are secure? This platform should also have a sandbox or playground environment where we can run models through tests and try these adversarial attacks, see how they respond. And then once we're sure the model meets our security protocols, then we push that to deployment and monitoring. I think the most important thing when we think about governance is done right and thoughtfully. Governance can actually be an accelerator to getting AI out in the wild and maintaining the US lead in AI innovation, right? The OMB recently put out a memo that really asked chief data and AI officers to think about themselves as enablers for using AI, not just managing the risk. And so getting this risk versus innovation speed right is, I think, the big challenge. So if you've thought of these governance risks ahead of time, established your frameworks, you're going to be able to move faster. So some things that framework should include: first and foremost, transparency and explainability. Every AI model, we should understand how do we expect it to respond in a given situation. And then when it does respond in deployment, we want to be able to understand why that AI model. So black box models erode trust. So it's really important you use tools and systems that have explainability. And on top of that, you have to think through the accountability of the AI system. Who ultimately is accountable for releasing it into the wild? Who's accountable when it goes wrong? And having that established up front. So when we don't have to ask those questions for each AI model we delivered, we've already thought through. And the last and the most important and the hardest part probably, of course, is what is the ethical alignment and compliance that we as an organization believe in. The AI must align with our societal values. And so it's really important for agencies to think through what is the fairness standards we're going to use? What is the bias mitigation techniques? And then once you've established that, then it's much quicker to put these models into production. And the last thing I would just add on this, one of the things we see many agencies wrestling with is what I'll call shadow AI. It's one thing to establish the governance and establish the security protocols, but then if there's such a myriad of tools and different people are building models in different ways and they're not following your governance, now you've got that risk, even though you've thought through all these things. So really getting kind of wrapping your arms around all the different AI solutions being developed. Again, we think that the most powerful way to think about moving fast with AI is one central platform that all of your key stakeholders have been trained on and understand your guidance and how to use. So pre-deployment, you want this platform to have explainability tools built in, automated documentation. So we build the model. This platform can tell us here's exactly how this model was built and how we expect it to respond under a variety of situations, the ability to audit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a playground where you can test against different things like toxicity or bias before you deploy. And then once you've deployed, you want a model registry that's keeping track of every model of deployment, what version's under, who approved that version, and then what predictions has it made and why. So you have a full audit trail of everything that's occurred. Yeah, it's a similar challenge. What we believe is from the beginning, designing privacy into your AI policies. And again, your software platform you're using to build AI, right? You have privacy settings built in for every data set, or particularly even every column of data if it has like PII. Building in automated systems to test for PII leakage, for example, personally identifiable information. So the privacy information, you want to be able to detect that in case someone submitted it and you didn't realize it. And then if I were to step back and say two overarching principles we really encourage agencies to do is first, data minimization. So really just collect and then process the minimum amount of data you need to make this AI system work. And so you want to think through ahead of time, what are we trying to accomplish and what data do we need? And then second, what I might call data sovereignty, which is let's keep the data where it's collected at that agency for that use case and bring your AI platform to the data, one common platform that can work across all of your data stores, whether it be cloud or on-prem. So you're not moving the data to multiple systems and you can kind of lose control of it. So those are the two, I think, big things we would recommend to make data privacy a little easier for organizations.